Welcome to the Escarpment. This is my model railway HO build channel and I'm your host Jason. Today's video, it's all about those moments where you have certain challenges that sort of get you in that mindset of going, why am I in this hobby? Is this hobby worth it? What the is this all about? A couple of such moments I've had with track work and wiring on this layout of mine. Before I take you around, because I'll also give you just a bit of an update of what's also been happening in the background, because I've sort of been a little bit quiet on Facebook of late. So the first challenge I had was up there on the Terry Maintenance Centre. I've got 3 curved points, well I did have, and I'll get to that a little later. I had 3 curved points up there, back to back almost, to sort of navigate around that 90-degree corner up on the far wall with the layout. You see, as the trains come through and navigates the level 3 branch line, they come through and they cross over a number of tracks and then they head into the Terry station, which is a terminus station. Now from there I can either put a loco on the other end and sort of take it back out, or I can back it into the coach yard up there against the back wall. But in doing that I've got to navigate that 90-degree turn, and that's where I've got those set of points. But you see, no matter what I did, it was just derailment after derailment. Now, this was only happening with reversing the coaches. It wasn't actually going forward. It seemed to be okay, although there was a few little hiccups. So that's why I was sort of thinking to myself, I'm concentrating on those set of points up there, the curved points. During that exercise, one of the point arms decided to snap off. That was another issue, and it was frustrating and it cost. Then I went into replacing all the curve points. I guess moving around the check rails, making sure they were in alignment, looking at the frogs, tweaking the frogs to see whether they were out of alignment with the rest of the points. And it was just a lot of time spent in doing that, and no real positive outcome. There were certain aspects that improved it a little bit, but at the end of the day I ran it again, it would then derail. And it was funny, it seemed like the slower it went, the more it derailed. So then I turned my attention to the coaches, looking at the couplers, the trip pins to the couplers, the bogies, etc. And I have a number of coaches from different brands from Australian manufacturers, and all of them weren't without fault of some sort. Whether the couplers were all at different heights, the trip pins to the couplers were hitting too low, hitting the rails, whether or not the bogies were getting locked, even though most of these were saying they could run on a minimum radius of 18 inches, and my radius is a lot more than 18 inches, that's for sure. Even in that tight corner up there, I'd still be at the 22-24 inch. All sorts of issues I was finding with the coaches, so I was really pissed off, to be honest with you. I mean, all the trouble to get the detail in these RTR models, but yet some of the core functions of it are just lacking. And really disappointing. So look, at a certain point in the future I'm gonna have to come back and do a whole bunch of maintenance right across my locos and coaches and cars, etc, because I've found a number of issues over the last few years, but I guess I just haven't got to that point getting back to it. But I never found it to a point where it really created havoc up there for me, and it was really frustrating due to the fact that even looking at the track configuration, I've already got my control panel up there. It's been printed out with a certain configuration, so I couldn't deviate from that. Whatever tweaks that I could do up there, it had to still be in alignment with that control panel. So that was another challenge with all that sort of stuff going on. But look, I'm going to move on to the next challenge. I will take you up there a little later and sort of explain a little bit more on what I did, and now that I've corrected the problem, but without a lot of swearing and see you next Tuesday type stuff going on. The next one, let's come back to the control panels. I really screwed up with going towards that series circuit. That's all been corrected. It's back to a parallel circuit. all things are great with the control panels. But getting back to the powering of the control panels, you see, even after all that, I was still getting voltage drops, and especially for the two over here on the level 3 and 2 branch lines, because they are the ones that are furthest from my main control cabinet, and that's basically where all the power is delivered throughout the layout. So with the power cabinet, and again, I'll show you some bits and pieces a little later because there were some changes I made to that. As I was testing the bus power and finding all these voltage drops, the other thing that I found in the power cabinet was my buck converters. Now I used variable ones, and the problem with those ones is even with a heat sink on those, I think their upper limit's around the 4.5 amps. But anyway, during this testing exercise, touching those, they were really hot, because obviously when I was looking, and I've got some meters over there that should have shown me what it's drawing as far as the voltage and the amp. The amps were in the 3.5 mark, and I thought I had enough headroom, but I thought to myself, well, I've still got one more control panel I haven't hooked up. But it was really, really hot, like scary hot. So for me, heat, electronics, to me, they sort of equal potential fire. Not that I saw any smoke, but they were, for me, at that temperature, it was a little bit uncomfortable, and I thought to myself, okay, I've got to change that. So I ended up going with some heavy duty buck converters, but the problem is they're static. You can't adjust the voltage on them, which was okay. I guess the compromise was I would take it up to, I think one of those buck converters, I've got 9 volts for the control panels, well, you know, for the point motors going through the control panels. So it was still within the range I was looking at, because I was looking at maybe 7.5 volts, that type of thing. So I've put that in place. I've done some rewiring. I've also replaced the 2 power supplies, changed it into one big unit, which is like a 15 volt, 100 amp. It's a mother. But not that I need all that, but I just love a lot more headroom. That means less heat coming from those components. So replace the buck converters, but it was still a voltage drop, still an issue, because initially I thought maybe because I was up at the limit with the amps, that was maybe causing some extra resistance. So then I concentrated on the bus wire. So the original bus wire, look, they were rated at 8 amps, and mind you, I was only sitting at 3.5 amps, and I was scratching my head going, well, there shouldn't be an issue there. But when rethinking about it, to me, I guess resistance is about how much you're trying to push through a pipe. So, you know, if you've got a pipe this small and you're pushing water through it, it's only going to push so much water before things start causing resistance and restrictions and heat. And that's the same as the electrical wire. So by expanding that pipe, so to speak, you're letting a lot more through with less resistance and less heat. And that's what I actually end up having to do, was to increase the bus wire. Originally I had 2mm square dual wires, and I've gone up to, I think it's a 4mm square dual wire system. So I went from an 8 amp rating up to, I think it's 22 amps. Not that I need that, but it's all about the size of the pipe. Frustrating. I was pretty pissed off, but I just got stuck into it, replaced that bus wiring. You know, there's nothing worse getting back under the layout. And I've got 3 levels. And while the bottom level you think might be the worst, but no, because it's low, I can get on my back, lie on the floor and do that wiring underneath, and that is the best one to do. When you get into the level 2 and level 3, and it's like twisting, and I'll tell you what, there was a couple of days there where my back was like really sore just from all that type of twisting. So anyway, got it done, it's done, and it has resolved the issue. So at least, because I thought if that didn't resolve the issue, yeah, it would have got serious for me as having one of those moments. I'll show you all these things, the challenges, what I did, some of the other changes. Then I'll come back and take you through what I'm going to do to finish off this calendar year, and then where's that leave me for next year. So up here on level 3 of the Terry Maintenance Centre, and this is the corner I was sort of talking about with the major issues. So there's the first curve point. There was a bit of a straight here, which I would have thought would have helped out, but this is the second one that I spoke about, and then the third one was here, attached right here, and you can see the outline there where this particular line came in. As the trains come in, they will normally come in on this line here. We're coming around, and you can see they would have then come into this first curve point that I have in the series, but it's no longer there. And really coming in, it didn't cause any issues. And then it will go down that line and then cross over to the Terry station. So it would then come back through this line, and then it would hit that first curve point, the second one, and this is where it started to trip up. And I think this particular curve point here was okay. It was really this center one when it was backed up against another one back to back here. You know, after I replaced them all, I ended up going back to the drawing board going, okay, shit, what am I going to do here? I've got to try get rid of this curve point, but at the same time, not interfere with the control panel configuration. So what I ended up doing was I did take that curve point out, as you can see, and then I put in a set of points here, but a straight one. So I brought it way back down here to allow me enough room with no sets of points there. And that did the trick for me, and also kept with the existing configuration from a control panel point of view. So that was that. But that took, while that sounds straightforward and easy, that took a long time to sort of get to that point. And then, you know, even with ripping out the set of points and moving down here and putting in a straight set, you know, I had to move point motors, rewire certain aspects. So, you know, it wasn't just a straightforward pick up and drop in type thing. There was a bit of work behind the scenes. But now all is good, and the train now are able to the coaches are able to be reversed back into this area over here. Those last 3 tracks there, you can see it's got some pits there. There'll be some big sheds, the full length of those 3 back tracks, full length right up to about here, I think. So that's something coming up, definitely coming up next year. I'd like to get them in just to sort of help bed in this scene. Now, one of the other changes I did previously, you would have seen a video where I've installed the control panel to the turntable, and that's all been done. But now if I look at, I don't know if I can get back further enough, but this level 2 and level 3 branch lines, they have 2 control panels. There could be up to 2 operators in this space. So I ended up putting another control panel for the turntable. So, and they are linked, meaning that they can be operated from either one. There's no switching on any sort. So if you change something on one, just reflected with the other. I mean, obviously that one is the main one. This one is like a secondary one that feeds off the first control panel. So I ended up putting that in, and that just means like if there's 2 operators in this area and maybe 1 operator's down there, you know, working level 3, and, you know, I've got another operator here that's operating level 2 but needs to change something from the turntable point of view, they can now do it from this area here, and it's right next to the control panel as well. So I thought that was a good addition. Now, another thing I had to come back to, previously there was a smaller control panel there where I had 1 switch which was going between programming track and switching it back to the main. But the problem is I've got 2 systems I can do that with. So I can do it through my MRC, which you can see got a lock programmer, and that's connected to the computer and the TV down at that end. So what I had found was those two systems were competing against each other and not really working. So I had to come in, re-look at the wiring, and basically broke it up into the following. So basically, the main switch here is either the MRC system or the ESU. And then if it's the MRC system, this one is either on the program track or on the main track. So that was a good fix, I guess, because I didn't even realize it was not working. This was the wiring that I did for it. You can see the two systems up there. I used a couple of double pole, double throw switches and sort of configured them in a way that all the other could be used, or they're both hooked into the system. And as you can see here, that's the 8th control panel in place. It is hooked up to the bus power, but I haven't hooked up the wires yet to the point motors, but that's ready to go for the next video. So I thought I'd just show you quickly the size difference with the new power bus. And you can see this was the original. When you compare it with new one, it is a lot bigger. And this is what's resolved the voltage drop issue. Another change that I've done on the inside of this particular helix, I've blacked it out with material. You can see there is a bit of a gap at the top there, but once the scenic stuff goes on top, that'll be all darkened and it'll blend in. You won't see that gap between the material and top level of the helix. I've got more material there to do this particular helix as well. And you can see there when you're sort of looking through, it can be quite distracting. So that is why I've sort of gone in with material and just blacked that out. So as mentioned earlier, there has been further changes to my power cabinet. For those with a keen eye, you can sort of tell that I've got more display panels up here. So that far one is the total amps drawn on the full layout. And then these three on this side will go off to different accessory type power buses. So you can see there, the one in the middle is the control panels. And you can see now with the bigger, even with the bigger bus wire that's gone in, it's dropped from 3.5 to 4. I think it even got up to 4 amps, back down to 2.1. And really nothing's really changed except putting in that new bus wire. So you can sort of see how much it has lowered the resistance and it's done the job. So I think if I didn't mention it before, I think on the far side, the voltage has dropped, I think 0.3 of a volt, which is well within tolerances. So that's been a great outcome. Some major changes I did repainted due to the fact that here are my new buck converters. They're heavy duty, able to take up to 10 amp. So you can see here, that's the big boy. That's the 15 volt, 100 amp power supply. It supplies both the track side and all those go off down drawer number 2, where you can see all my electronic DCC, breaker circuits, reversers, boosters, etc. So yeah, so rewired, used some bigger wire, better connections. They're rated at a higher power, so anything just to help with lowering resistance, I've sort of done and redone. Look, it wasn't a frustrating project, this one, but it was a necessity, I think, with the longevity of what was going on with the layout in general. So I hope you found that informative. Obviously, yeah, a couple of those challenges, but I've now beat them, mastered them, climbed the mountain, conquered the mountain. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but they're done and dusted now. But to be honest with you, it was pretty close to picking that section up and throwing it out the window. Where to from here? So I still have a very small list of items that I wanted to do or finish off with the, I guess, the infrastructure component of this build. Like I said, this build has now been like 5.5 years in the making. I've been really patient. especially, and I have a lot of questions. Why don't you start scenery? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And it's like, I've just got a method on how I tackle, especially this size layout. Now, this is the first time I've tackled this type of size. More or less mine have been just small switching type stuff. But I knew at the start there was a sequence I wanted to do. I didn't want to rush into things because getting into something of this size, it's just, the cost. And you all know the cost. So I didn't want to make mistakes. I didn't want to get to a point where rip it out and redo it. That would be nothing more frustrating. And I must admit, I've never had one of those thoughts with this. And mind you, I did take 2 years prior to starting the build to do on the plannings. I just want to finish some small jobs over Christmas. I've got a little bit of time off. I'll utilize as much as I can just to finish off that small list that I've got. And it's just some minor stuff. Coming up, I'll look at doing the next video just with quickly showing you how I do the wiring underneath from the control panels to the point motors. But where I want to get to is the beta testing. So look, if you're interested, if you're in the local area, which is the ACT, look, even if you wanted to travel from Sydney or whatever, if you're interested in traveling a couple of hours to be part of the testing beta group, by all means, reach out to me. I think the best way is reach out to me via the PM with Facebook, I think. And then I'll be looking at setting up, it'll probably be during the day over lunchtime, so that way I can also maybe put on a barbecue or something, just as a bit of thanks for those that are, giving up some of their time to come along and just do some beta testing. I do have some plans for that. I mean, it's not going to be any formal session running as such, although it'd be good to sort of have a look at that and see whether there's certain areas that may work, may not work, just as I move into that sort of approach as well. So as part of that terraforming, I really wanted to get back to this signature piece of the layout, which is the Stanwell Park Viaduct. And really this one that was really the driving force when I started to plan this particular layout. Although this did go through one change. I think at one point when I first planned it, it was straight because I thought it was one of those compromises that I had to do. But what I ended up doing was expanding the layout outwards and then putting a curve in like it is in the real thing. But anyway, I want to get back to this, and I've got some better, I guess, when I originally started printing, because I'm going to be covering this all with 3D prints of brickwork, archwork, the whole lot. And when I first started, I had these tops, but I had some old printers where the resolution weren't the best. Well, now that I've upgraded all that, it should be a hell of a lot better. And I know you're not going to see that on camera as such, but it was all the exact brickwork of the viaduct. And I want to start putting these on the legs here and at the front just prior to doing the terraforming here, because with the overlap, and I'll be able to blend that in better and get it to looking really realistic, not that you can sort of see where the structure meets the land, which sometimes I see on, especially around buildings, that type of thing. But that's the approach I'm having. But I'm looking forward to getting back to this signature piece. What's that space? That'll be next year. That will be definitely something that will be happening. I know I've spoken about it in the past, but I got to certain points and thought I was done, but then no, I really needed to make sure it was how I wanted it. And I guess earlier in the year you would have seen there was a big project here in front of me with putting in the new bench work, putting in the extension of the level 1 Port Kembla yards and the drop bridge, etc, etc. So there's been some major projects this year that I've added just for completeness, and now I'm at a point where it's like, yep, it's where I want it. Anyway, I feel like I've rambled on a lot. I don't think there's anything else I need to touch on except just a reminder, for anyone that wants to be part of that beta testing group. I haven't sorted out numbers. There might be like 4 or 5 people. That will have to be a bit of a trial thing, so we'll see how we go. So I may just limit the number to 4 or 5, I think, depending on whether I'm going to do some operating or I'm just going to go around and take notes and and collect information from people, that type of thing, which I think probably would be better if I did that. I'm going to leave it there now, so until next time, keep safe. Bye for now.